Hey, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about icons. We're going to design an icon for our digital Sherpa 360. I'm going to go through the process, explain the design side and different size requirements and what's expected and what that means. The icon, logo, favicon, different people call it different names. It doesn't really matter. But we're going to go through the design process. I'm going to share my screen and let's get to work. If you like these videos, press the subscribe button, like, share, comment, do all of that stuff. It helps other people see it in YouTube and all of that other happy jazz. So let's get to it and let me share my screen. All right, so here we have Photoshop. Let's talk about Photoshop really quickly. This isn't a paid advertisement for Photoshop, but as you're starting your agency, Adobe is one of the paid platforms. It costs per user $57.16 per month. Learn to use Photoshop. It has a lot of great tools in it that as you start to learn how to use those tools for your agency, you can also use that as a service from a creative standpoint to be able to monetize that and make money, even if it's just small amounts of money to actually keep you going, grow, build relationships, build rapport, et cetera, et cetera. So let's dig in. I'm going to share my screen full time so you don't have to, or in one big thing, so you don't have to stare at my ugly mug. And let's get to designing. So first off, let's talk about creating, we're going to create a new in Photoshop. Let me drag this over so everybody can see it on their screen. And we're going to call this the Digital Sherpa 360 icon. Again, it doesn't really matter. We're going to make this square. So we're going to do 1000 by 1000. And all of these are presets. So we want to make sure that RGB color mode, what are we doing? Are we doing 8-bit? For this, it's something simple. We're just going to use 8-bit, white background. We're going to eliminate that background as we go through, and we're going to start designing. All right. So first off, let's talk about what are we designing for. You see, let me minimize this here real quick. You see this little area right up here, your icon up here. So this is the one for Digital Sherpa. And right now that has the WordPress Favicon. The size for that area is 32 by 32, but we're using Divi, and Divi requires for that area a 512 pixel by 512 pixel. Why are we designing at 1000 pixels by 1000 pixels? Well, because when we're done, this is going to allow us to be able to use this potential icon favicon for other things, right? So we're blowing it up, we're going to resize it, we're going to shrink it down to the size that we need, and let's dig back in because now we have a canvas. If you are unfamiliar with Photoshop, this is your basic background or canvas to draw on. I highly recommend Photoshop as a design tool. And the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to change our color palette because unbeknownst to you guys, in the previous videos, we went with the green and we used this purple as a supporting color. But I really like this purple, so I'm going to stick with it because I just think it stands out and it's just a super cool color that's kind of different that maybe isn't seen all the time. So let's go back. We've copied Control-C or Command-C on a Mac, Control-C on PC. We've copied that hex color code and we're going to go back into our Photoshop. And the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to click right here on the foreground color because that's what we want to change. And we want to paste that into this area here so we have our color palette correct right at the beginning. We're going to make this super basic because, again, you don't want a lot of detail in this area. And the reason being is because once you shrink it down, if you put a whole bunch of detail in it, it's just going to get lost. So the very first thing we're going to do, and for this, I tend to like round better than I like square. I just think it looks a little bit cooler. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to go here where it shows the square. We're going to go ahead and click and hold, which is going to open up our panel or our choices here. We're going to choose the ellipse tool. Okay. And now here, see how it's automatically doing a fill of our foreground color. We're going to go ahead and make a circle. All right, so we're going to make a circle. It's going to automatically draw that circle in, fill that circle in with our foreground color. And then the very next thing I'm going to do, since I have 1000 by 1000 area to use, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to change this to 980 because we have a 1,000 by 1,000, right? So I want to fill that circle in as much as possible. And I have some overlap here. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click my move tool. And then I'm going to center that. So see how the pink, we're going to center that image within that space. And we've moved that into our area. And now we have a purple circle, which is edge to edge, probably as close as what we want that to be. The very next thing we're going to do, this is going to sound confusing, but there's, when you look at Adobe tries to think for you. There's a lot of AI involved. So the very next thing I'm going to do is I have the circle here done. I'm not going to apply any effects to it. But the very next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click here so that that is not visible anymore. All right. Now, because my next color that I want to choose to go in here is going to be white, and this is on a white background, I won't be able to see it. I'm going to go ahead and hide my background as well. So see how I did that? Click to show, click to remove. So now it's invisible within, those layers are invisible. The very next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my text tool. And since I'm using Lato as our main font, I want to stick with that. I'm using black italic. So, thickness, you can use any of these, but I want something that's very pronounced. So I'm going to click on, black italic. This is showing 230 pixels, so it's going to be awfully small. If I put something there, it's going to be awfully small, and it's not going to fill that space, even though I'm only going to use one letter, because I want this to be simple. I want it to be as simple as possible, and I want to be able to move on to the next task. So I'm going to go here in this part right here, and I'm going to go ahead and change that to where it shows -10 for horizontal spacing. I'm going to change that to 0, even though we're only using one color or one single letter. And then I'm not going to change this yet, but the very next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to type a letter. Okay, so I'm going to type a capital S. Oh, let me do this here. Invalid numeric. Oh, I was stuck here. All right, so I'm going to go back here. I'm going to click into this space. So I'm still within that text layer. I'm going to hit Control A or Command A on a Mac, and I'm going to type a single letter, and that letter is S. All right. Now, I want this S to be white, so I'm going to go ahead and highlight that here. I'm going to go over here to where the color is. I'm going to click here, and I'm going to type in FFF. FFF. Now, that's 6 Fs, which is pure white. I'm not going to do anything crazy here. In Adobe, you can actually use 3 Fs, and it'll pick up on white or pure white. So now I have my S. Now I'm going to blow that up, and I'm going to make that, I don't know, 900. And I've got a pretty good size S here. I'm going to click on my move tool over here, and then I'm going to go ahead and, let's see, there it is. And I'm going to center that S. All right. So I'm centering that S. Now I'm going to go ahead and make my purple visible. And now I have a big S. Do I want it to be bigger than that? I think I want it to be a little bit bigger than that. I want it to encompass more of this circle because, again, it's going to be slimmed down. See how the W here in WordPress is huge and fills that circle, and you can barely make out the W. So I want to make this S bigger. All right, so I'm going to highlight this area, and I'm going to make that, let's say, 960. Let's try 960. Oh, 960 is still a little small. So let me just do 1080. 1080 is pretty big, okay? And I like that. I like the size of that. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my move tool, and then I'm going to go ahead and center that S. All right. So now we have a basic design. I think this looks pretty slick. We're going to actually go through the motions of, I'm going to show you where to put it, how to put it in there, all this other cool stuff. Excuse me. But now let's go ahead and add some effects to this. All right. So while we're in the effects area, I'm going to, once you have that layer highlighted here, now we can come down here and we can apply effects. The very first thing I want to do is I want to do that to my ellipse. And I want to click on the effects, and I'm going to add a bevel and emboss. All right, and it's going to pull up a screen. Let me drag this screen over because this is on a different monitor. So here it is. And I'm gonna move this over here just so that it's out of the way so we can see that. So what this did was, as soon as I clicked that button, is it applied this shadow area, or not shadow area, but it caused that rounded almost 3D effect to it. And then I have a choice of down or up. And I'm not gonna mess with these presets. I can make these, so I can make this any color. Let's assume that I decide I want that to be a shade of gray. So it's a little bit, so let's use E8, 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 all right? Or let's use C0, C0, C0. And that's going to give me a darker shade of gray instead of white. All right. And let's see how that looks. So that's making it a little bit lighter, right? So now let's do the same here. I'm going to change that to C0, C0, C0. And there we have it. So that looks pretty good. All right. The very next thing that we're going to do is, and I'm not going to explain all of these different things to you in this video because we want to make it quick. I'm going to go ahead and add an inner shadow, and I'm going to add an inner glow. All right. Now, let me show you what that did. All right. So look right here as I'm applying that. I'm going to apply an inner shadow, which caused dark to happen here. So I have dark and light. So what it's doing is it's tilting it up as you're looking at it. It's not really doing that. It's just applying that effect. And then I'm going to create an inner glow. And you're not really seeing the inner glow because it's a light gray, but it's adding definition to the surrounding area of that circle so that that circle is standing out at you. And then I'm going to hit OK. All right. So the inner bevel, remember that this is down, because the very next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to apply effects. I'm going to apply effects to the letter here. And I'm going to go through the same process, and I'm going to apply an inner bevel. Now in this one, see how it's doing the same thing, but I don't really like that because it's applying the same effect here. So what I want to do is I want to change that transition from up to down. All right. So now that S is standing out instead of being subdued within that image. And I'm going to apply the same inner shadow, and I'm going to apply the same inner glow, and now it's defining that S within the circle. Okay. Now the very last thing I want to do, and we're almost done with the design process, I'm going to show you how to implement it because we just want to do it quick and easy. And literally I can create this little piece in roughly, I don't know, 7 or 8 minutes. I mean, half the time of what it's going to take to explain this to you. But the very next thing I want to do is I want to come down here, and I want to click on effects, and I want to click on drop shadow. Okay. So see how that drop shadow is applying this drop shadow here? I need to make a decision as to whether I like that or not. In this case, it's going to be shrunk down to 32 by 32. And I think I just decided that I don't like the idea of applying a drop shadow to that. Okay. See how that works? And you can mess around with the settings here, and you can do all kinds of different things. You can change the colors, et cetera, but I really don't want to see a drop shadow on this because I don't think we're going to see it. So I'm going to click OK. Now we're literally done with creating our icon. We did it that quickly. Now let's go ahead and implement that. And I want to be real clear because I get a lot of pushback from our industry. And the pushback that I get is scaled vector graphics versus portable network graphics versus a JPEG. So a lot of people are going to fight me on this, but I'm going for size because size means speed. Speed means a faster website, better environment, a better experience, digital experience for your visitors. So I want to go as small as possible, and I'm going to show you this. I'm going to make a choice. First of all, a JPEG. Okay, a JPEG is going to put a background into it because it's going to flatten it out. And it may be smaller, but it's not going to show the transparent background, and you're going to see white behind it. Okay, and we don't want that because if we look here, none of these have a background behind them. Okay, maybe this one does, I don't know, but this one doesn't, and this one doesn't either. So we want it to stand out without having that white background. So now we have a choice between portable network graphics versus, or PNG versus scaled vector graphics, which is an SVG. And I really don't care at this point. What I do care about is which one is smaller. So we're going to go ahead and do this, and we're going to press File. We're going to export this, and we're going to export this as, you're not seeing this on my screen. Let me drag this over. It's going to give you a choice here. The very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to export this as a PNG. And I'm going to push this into the design assets for Agency Hacker, because that's the channel you're watching. And I'm going to go ahead. It's going to say all files, but I chose PNG before, so it's going to save this as a PNG. All right. And I'm going to show you the difference. So then I'm going to click on this again, and I'm going to go ahead and export this again. And then I'm going to export it again as a scaled vector graphic. Okay, I'm going to choose SVG here. I'm going to hit export again. Now, see this right here? See how it screwed this up right here? So the argument against scaled vector graphics is pretty easy, because it transformed this. Now let's assume that it didn't, and everything was going to stay the same. And I'm going to get a lot of pushback. Everybody says use SVG, blah blah blah, and I openly argue with them that I am going to use the smallest file size. That's all I care about. I'm going to export this SVG. I'm going to put it right back in here, and I'm going to hit save. All right, so now that image is saved. See how it transformed, and the scaled vector graphics did not operate properly on the save. The very next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this folder. I'm going to go into design assets, and I literally have two different versions. Okay, I have this one right here, which is 2.21 KB, and then I have this one right here, which is 114 kilobytes. But this one didn't transition and didn't save properly. So which one am I going to go with? I'm going to go with the PNG because it's easier. Okay, and once I compress and resize and all of this other stuff, this is going to turn out into a better solution anyways. But let's go through that process. So now we have our image. I'm going to go ahead and minimize. I'm going to go ahead and minimize my Photoshop. And again, go to Adobe. This is a great tool. It's something that I enjoy paying the bill for every single month, is using Adobe products. We're going to get into that in later videos. But the very next thing I need to do is I need to resize this picture. Now I can do that in Adobe, but it's just as easy here. If I go to pickresize.com, which is a free tool, that'll be in the comment section. And then I'm going to go ahead and click here. And let me go into my design assets and choose Digital Sherpa 360 icon here. Okay, so it's uploaded here, and then I'm going to continue to edit this picture. This is a great free tool. You can crop, you can resize, you can do all of these things. But the very next thing that I need to do is I need to make this 512 by 512. Let me show you where that's at. So if I go into Appearance and I go into Themes, Customize here, it's going to pull up the menu for customization. Let's give it a second. And when I go into my general settings here, okay, so I'm going to go into my general settings here, and I go into my site identity, it tells me that the proper upload size is 512 by 512. So that's what I'm looking for. So it needs to be square and at least 512 by 512. So I want to make that as small as possible, again, to keep my site speed as fast as possible. So I'm going to go back here to pick resize. It says choose 50% smaller. We don't necessarily want it 50% smaller, so we're going to choose a custom size. And in here, we're going to choose 512 by 512. And then we're going to go down here. We're going to make sure that the image file format is PNG, and I'm done resize my picture. All right, so it's resized it to here, and we're going to go ahead and click Save to Disk. And now it's saved that file here. Now we can look at it if we want, but I don't necessarily want to do that right now. The very next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into another free website. And again, this will be in the episode notes. It's called tinypng.com. And I use these so much. See how it's automatically going right to tinypng, because I just use it so much. And then I'm going to go here and I'm going to drag that into here. And I've compressed this image by 70%. And now I've taken it from 67.1 down to 19.9. Now I'm going to click the download button. Again, this is a free tool. And the very next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go down to that image that I just downloaded, and I'm going to show in folder. All right. And then here, I'm going to right click here, and I'm going to rename this. And I want this to be Digital Sherpa 360. And then I'm going to do 512X. 512 is an identifier. And then I'm going to put here compressed. Oops, compressed. And I'm going to hit enter. All right, so now I have that here. I'm also going to go down here, which is just my 512 that isn't compressed. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to rename that Digital Sherpa. Oops, Sherpa 360 512 by 512. So that's the uncompressed image. And then since I have design assets here, I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop that here in design assets and drag and drop here into design assets. And then I'm going to go ahead and X out. So the very next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into here, which is my menu. And now I have my image ready. And let's go ahead and select site icon. And then since it's not here anymore, since we already renamed it, I'm going to go ahead and upload my file. I'm going to select my file and see how it says suggested image dimensions is 512 by 512. I'm going to go look for my compressed image, which is here. I'm going to choose that image by double clicking. It's uploading. And now I have this here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to say site icon. Okay. I'm going to hit Control A or Command A, Control A on a PC or Command A on a Mac. Oops, I did that wrong. I'm going to go back here, triple click, Control C or Command C on a Mac, Control or Command V, and I'm going to copy and paste the same information in the alt text, title text, caption, and description to make sure that it's meeting ADA compliance and SEO standards. And the very next thing it did is it popped up right here, and that looks pretty sharp. Okay, I just created an icon. Literally, if I was going to do this for myself, it would take me roughly, 8 minutes, 5 minutes. It's so quick, so easy. I'm going to go ahead and hit the publish button, and I'm done. All right. So I just taught you how to make a favicon, where to place it on your WordPress site, what the size parameters are, and then I'm going to include everything in the description for the show. And the next video is going to be how to make this, which is your banner logo. And we're going to do some really cool stuff with this, and we're going to mix it up, and we're going to do some paint stuff in Photoshop. And I may do a image hover exchange, et cetera, stuff like that. But I want, one of the things I'm going to tell you is when you start in the agency process and you're doing all of the design work and everything else, let me go ahead and go back to my ugly mug here. One of the things that I see with people who are new agency owners is you're so super excited that blah, blah, blah. You're going to do everything the best. You're going to do all of this stuff, and you get hung up. And you get hung up on things, and you spend so much time going down these rabbit holes. Don't spend any more time on that than you need to, because after all, it's not going to matter right now. All right. What matters right now is getting all of your assets in place so that you have a marketable product to a prospective client that you can start monetizing your agency quickly. Even if it's only a few $100s here and a few $100s there, it's going to help you not have to eat beans and rice every month. Okay, so let's get to the point where you're monetizing stuff and you're putting yourself in a position where you can monetize what you have, and you can do that by gaining clients in different areas. In this case, creating a site icon. With that 1,000 by 1,000, literally, if I want a shirt made and I just want my purple embroidered whatever that looks like, I could use that 1,000 by 1,000 image, and I could do all of those things, and I could have all of those assets in place to do it quickly. All right. So thanks for showing up. The next one is going to be on banner logos, proper size, all of that other stuff. And I'm glad you're here. Leave some constructive feedback in the comment section. I love to answer all of the comments. I try and do it as quickly as possible. And we'll see you on the next episode. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for being here.